Welcome to So Many Receipts. I'm Flo Michelle, former entertainment editor and lifelong reality TV addict, unpacking the tea from Farmer Wants a Wife, Real Housewives, Bravo and beyond. Let's get stuck in. Hello, I hope you're all doing well. Now, first up, a correction. I said on the last show that I believe that this week marked the end of Farmer Wants a Wife, but not so. It's actually ending officially with one more show this coming Sunday night. Honestly, the communication around this season has been very weird this year. So many news sites were in the dark about the official end date and the official start date. So apologies for getting it wrong, but honestly, nobody knew what was going on. So I'll be giving you all my final thoughts on this bizarre little season next week, when we also find out who Dylan and Jared end up choosing. So in the last show, we found out that Zach chose Maya, no surprise there, and that Jason chose Poppy, which was kind of a surprise. People are saying now that he made the wrong choice, but I actually think the biggest mistake was him choosing anyone at all, because there are now reports that he and Poppy split just weeks later, which I'm not shocked by. There were then rumours that he rekindled something with Bene. Remember Bene, the woman he didn't even choose for his final five? The one that fainted in the barn? Anyway, more about her in a bit. Honestly, choosing Poppy is one of the strangest Farmer Wants a Wife matches I can remember. I still don't understand why she even applied for Jason when she doesn't want kids. And he said on his bio that he wanted more, and yet he still picked her. Make it make sense. They look so mismatched when they were driving around in that sports car of hers and she was showing him properties that she'd sold as a real estate agent, while Jason looked like he'd rather be back at the farm checking out a cow's behind. I mean, he looked like he was totally disinterested. There she was in this slick business suit and he was in his old flannel shirt. Oh, they were such an odd couple. I think that he thought she was attractive and that was about it. I got zero chemistry vibes from him, very little in common. So people say that he should have chosen Logan, and I liked Logan too, but I just didn't get the feeling that he was that into her. They also had zero vibes, and considering she's been hurt and she's got kids, I think it would have been unfair for him to choose her when he wasn't fully invested, especially if she had gone down the route of introducing her kids to him, maybe moving to a farm. I actually don't think it would have gotten that far anyway. He kept also going on about their 9-year age difference when she's actually only 3 years younger than Poppy. I felt that Poppy was so much older than her. She just presented as being much more mature. I felt this age thing about Logan was just an excuse from him. I think Jason probably knew Poppy wasn't right either, but after his real life dating woes, which I did report on the podcast 2 weeks ago, maybe he was just hoping something would work because he was caught up in this pregnancy scam. I mean, go back and have a listen if you want to check out the backstory. Look, I do hope this guy finds love, but sometimes the right choice on these types of shows isn't choosing someone. It's actually having the self-awareness to choose no one. So back to Bene. Reports said she was telling friends Jason slid into her DMs after filming Wrapped and that they were chatting and flirting ever since. One source said Benny's been proudly telling friends that Jason messaged her and they've been getting along really well. She also added Jason is no longer with the person that he picked, aka Poppy. However, Bene then did comment on our TikTok about this, saying that there is in fact nothing going on and that she's sticking to city boys from now on. So thanks for clearing up that rumour. Although the thing about Farmer is that the contestants do all stay in touch pretty much. It's a pretty close-knit group. They don't tend to fall out with each other as much as the MAFS people. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if all of the Farmers are actually DMing contestants. It wasn't a great year for matches. Let's see who's actually dating who after the final show. So speaking of dating, Grayson McIvor from MAFS shared a really vulnerable dating update on his Instagram 10 months after filming ended for him, revealing that he's still single. He admits he's struggling, he's lonely, and he's now wondering if he'll ever find his person and become a dad.
At the moment, for me, I'm feeling really lonely in my life. I'm craving connection from someone so bad. Yeah, like I said, really lonely. I find myself thinking, am I ever going to meet my person? Am I ever going to be a dad one day? I'm just feeling, a bit unfulfilled and in a bit of a plateau, and I'm just struggling, feeling a little bit empty at the moment. And I'm super happy. I love my life. I love my family, my friends. My health is I'm feeling healthy. My business is flying. All those things are great. I'm just feeling like, lonely. And then you sort of think, well, is there something wrong with me? That's a tough thought. Looking for a little bit more out of life. What's next?
So who can forget Grayson breaking down about these same fears while he was on MAFS? It's just so frustrating not knowing whether your person's going to show up, if they're going to show up, isn't it? Or should you resign yourself to just being single and content somehow? I think it's really brave of him to give such an honest update publicly, particularly as guys can be hesitant to talk about this kind of stuff. When Grayson left the show, I thought surely someone's going to snap this guy up straight away. So I was a bit surprised because I think he's got a lot to offer, especially as some MAFS cast found new relationships in record time, including Gia, Alyssa, Scott, and also Julia, who was matched with Grayson. I think you sort of assume with reality stars that people are going to slide into their DMs and opportunities are suddenly going to be everywhere. I heard that David said that after the show, he was just flooded with DMs. But I think for many of them, it's probably back to square one. And maybe it's even harder because now they're trying to find love as a public figure, and yet people have probably already formed opinions of them. I'm still really hoping Grayson gets his fairy tale when the timing is right. Fingers crossed. Now, in other MAFS news, last week I was having a bit of a snoop around LinkedIn and discovered that MAFS bride Rachel has landed herself a brand new job. Well, apparently I couldn't help myself because I was snooping again this week. Oh, what's wrong with me? This time I stumbled across Rebecca's LinkedIn profile where she shared that she's currently looking for work in her corporate field. Remember Rebecca, who was paired with old Captain Beard Steve as the token older couple? The update comes as Rebecca has been opening up on her social media about what she described as a really difficult period in her life following what has been a whirlwind year for her. So in one emotional video, she admitted that she's feeling the pressure of being unemployed, saying, "I've been sitting at home in tears for the last 2 hours. It's Monday. I'm still not working and I'm starting to feel a bit stressed." Rebecca also revealed she's developed a stress-related growth on her lip, adding, "Just a reminder that everything is not always rainbows and butterflies and looks like it does on Instagram." So does that mean she's not been working much since filming ended all that time ago? Yikes. Rebecca also appeared to touch on the end of a friendship. Without naming anyone, Rebecca reflected on how much life has changed over the past year, saying, "The last year has been extremely difficult. There has been some highs and lows. The people who have been on that journey, I really appreciate. I keep my circle tight. If you showed up for me, I'll show up for you. Unfortunately, I've lost a few friendships over the past couple of years. It doesn't mean those friendships weren't real. I'll always have fond memories. It just means we're on different paths." Gee, that all sounds pretty heavy. However, despite everything she's been dealing with, Rebecca said she's trying to focus on the positives. In another post, she reveals she'd turned a corner after a tough day, saying, "Yesterday I cried. Today I'm feeling so much better." Just a reminder that it's okay to have a bad day. You don't have to have it all figured out every single day. Sometimes all it takes is a little sleep, a fresh start, a visit to the hairdresser, your favourite outfit, and a reminder that brighter days do come. Life is good, even if yesterday didn't feel like it. Oh, Rebecca, poor Rebecca. I liked her. She got a rough deal being paired with crusty old Steve. So last week I talked a bit about the aftermath of going on a show like MAFS, and these stories from Grayson and Rebecca really drive that home because behind the headlines, the social media followers and the TV fame, they're both talking about something a lot more relatable: loneliness and uncertainty and trying to rebuild their lives after a show ends. Whatever people think of them from watching a show, it's hard not to feel for anyone who's willing to be this honest about struggling. And all that glossy lip syncing we see on social media, that's never fully the story. So last week marked a pretty historic moment in reality TV, the premiere of the 20th season of The Real Housewives of Orange County. Can you believe it? 20 years. This is the franchise that started it all and completely changed the reality TV landscape. Without it, we may have never seen glass smashing with our own eyes. Now, I have seen a few people online saying the premiere was a bit boring, and honestly, I think we all need to calm down. It's episode 1. Give it time for the madness to unfold. Every Housewives takes a little while to warm up. They can't be flipping tables and throwing bread rolls 5 minutes into the premiere. The biggest moment for me was, of course, seeing OG Queen Vicki Gunvalson back on screen. Now, technically, she hasn't been a full-time housewife for about 8 years, but I actually feel like she never really left because she's popped up so often as a friend of the show. It already feels like Bravo is pairing her back up with Shannon, and honestly, I don't mind it. Watching those two stumble around together, fall over in the sand, flash their industrial strength Spanx is becoming like a Housewives version of the Golden Girls. It's silly, it's a bit slapstick, they run the goofy music during their scenes, but it makes me smile, and I did like the Golden Girls back in its heyday. And actually what I'm most interested in is the Trace Amigas. Vicki's talking to Shannon, Tamara's talking to Vicki, but Tamara and Shannon still aren't talking. Considering those three were once inseparable, did their own little stage tours together, I wouldn't be surprised if a major story is this three trying to reunite. Heather Dubrow is also another one I'm closely watching, although I'm actually surprised she's still on Orange County because for years she said that she just really wants to be on Beverly Hills. Last season, I did feel she was on the sidelines. Now she's back with another ridiculously expensive party, forking out $75,000 for it. Is that all she offers? Parties? I guess it's better than Bravo paying, right? Then we've got Emily and Gina. People have also been asking for 8 years why this dull double act is still on the show. I have to say, though, Emily looked incredible. She's lost a lot of weight, really does look great. They do both really need a strong season because they've been around for so long. I feel like they're both clinging to these oranges by a thread. I don't want to hear any more about Emily's son's eating disorder or the size of Travis's balls, okay? And then there's the newcomer Carmela, former Playboy Playmate of the Year 20 years ago. Considering Katie Janela was a disaster as a newbie, I'm wondering if Carmela has more luck. So I actually think whether you enjoy Orange County depends on how long you've been watching it. So when my Receipt Roundup podcast, Shelley and I were talking about OC last year, she was saying, I don't get it. Why do people love this franchise so much? Can you please wake me up when it's over? And I understood why she felt that way because last year was the first time she'd watched a whole season, and that was probably OC at its worst. It basically turned into Murder, She Wrote. Who was the blogger? Who was the boy band member Tamara supposedly had a fling with? Who leaked what? Who talked to what journo? Aside from this, the whole show revolved around taking down Katie and Gretchen bringing up old desiccated beefs. Enough with the Agatha Christie chapters. Let's hope this show course corrects. You know, I honestly cannot believe the Valley is still making Danny the central storyline over something that happened 3 years ago now. We're still talking about the incident involving Jasmine and Melissa where Danny patted them on the leg and the butt when he was drunk. At this point, this storyline has had more airtime than some of the actual cast members. Janet is still bringing it up, and it's become the biggest source of conflict on the show. The only source, even though it was the only storyline last season as well. Now, in the most recent episodes, Janet has explained why it affected her so deeply. She alluded to experience physical abuse when she was younger. So I understand why something like that would be a trigger for her, and I don't want to minimize her experience. However, I also don't think it was fair to frame Danny's behavior in the same category. Danny has been really upset ever since because he feels he's effectively been labelled as someone who assaulted women, and Janet continues to bring it up and not say sorry for her part in it. We have now seen him apologise on camera for this incident approximately 87 times. And at this point, I think it's become completely disproportionate. Now, look, I understand why some viewers don't like Danny. He can be irritating, and I know a lot of people don't like the way he speaks to Nia. His gyrating, hip swiveling, drunk dancing at the club also is still giving me nightmares. But for him to become the show's chief villain now that Jax is gone, over an incident from 3 years ago. We are talking Halloween 2023. It just feels bizarre to me. This incident is now older than some reality TV marriages. And I think that's why so many fans are now calling for the Valley to either be rested, rebooted, or significantly recast, because it does feel like the show has simply run out of story. Janet has never really clicked for me as a reality TV personality, and if conflict is genuinely very triggering for her, I do wonder whether this environment is the healthiest place for her to be, because reality TV thrives on conflict and constantly magnifies it. She's always just walking away in tears. As far as the ex-Vanderpump Rules cast go, Tom Schwartz hasn't added much either, apart from a handsome face. On Vanderpump, he was kind of interesting because of his relationship with ex-wife Katie. On The Valley, I get that his only purpose is to be the show's emotional support dog, but even a Labrador needs a storyline. Lala is another one. I loved her on Vanderpump, but here it often feels like her role is simply to just comment on everyone else's relationship, even though she's had the worst relationships on the planet. Even Brittany, now that Jax has left, doesn't have a clear storyline anymore. I think that scene of her showing off pics of her son to the barman just kind of sums up her whole experience, her whole existence, really. It's like, I'm a mum and I don't know what I'm doing here. Can I please go home to drink tea? The only relationship, actually, that genuinely feels like it's evolving on screen is Kristen and Luke, navigating life after having a baby and working through their intimacy issues, because Jesse, Michelle, and Lacey are getting along better. Zach is doing just what Zach always does. Danny is still apologising, but outside of this, what else is driving the season? Ironically, the most interesting thing happening to anyone is Michelle is dating Dr. Dre, and that's happening off camera. Bravo really needs to rethink where the Valley goes from here, because at the moment it feels like the cast are trying to stretch one incident into an entire season. Again. Okay, finishing with Storytime, and today I want to talk about Rolf Harris, Primetime Predator, which is now streaming on ABC iView. Now, I actually did wonder whether I should even bring up this new doco-series, because I'm fully aware that unless you're a Gen Xer or a Boomer, you might not even remember who Rolf Harris is, but I certainly do, because Rolf was actually from Perth, which is where I'm from. And growing up there in the 70s and 80s, he was a massive deal. He left for London when he was 18, and he was pretty much Perth's only homegrown celebrity back then. He talked about Perth in interviews many, many times, and we actually thought it was great that at least someone was talking about Perth, even if it was this old fool with a wobble board. I mean, it's hard to even sum up what he was. He was sort of this artist turned cringy media personality turned bad singer, and yet he was somehow representative of all of Australia. I mean, this was all we had. Please remember that. To this day, Perth has still not produced a massive amount of global stars. I mean, later on we had Heath Ledger. He's probably the main one. And more recently, it produced 1/4 of last year's MAFS cast. Very exciting. Shout out to Afina, Billy, Karina, and Paul. But back in the day, for decades, it was just Rolf Harris. So Primetime Predator lays out the full, sickening story of how Rolf preyed on underage girls and young women for years. I'm sure you know what I mean. He really was a predator, hiding in plain sight. The doco shows a lot of old footage of him using really creepy innuendos on screen. You watch it and you think, why did no one kind of pick up more on this stuff? But honestly, no one thought anything of it at the time. Everyone thought he was just this eccentric, folksy old guy who was totally harmless. In a lot of ways, it mirrors the story of UK presenter Jimmy Savile. If you watched those documentaries on him, you'll probably be interested in this one too. But be warned, it is absolutely stomach churning. Watching old clips of him doing Jake the Peg now, it just makes your skin crawl. The series also includes a lot of eyewitness accounts from now grown women who are still deeply traumatized by the awful things he did to them. So for me, this hits a little close to home, because back in 1997, I was living in London, working in magazines. And it sounds very weird to say this now, but Rolf Harris actually was sort of a comforting figure to me, because at the time he was hosting a British series called Animal Hospital, which was on 5 nights a week there on at 6:30 p.m. I'd come home from work, I'd tune in, and I'd actually find it comforting to hear his very Aussie accent. Look, there's Uncle Rolf on TV again. Ooh, ick, ick, ick. This was back in the pre-smartphone days when you just sat down and watched broadcast TV. That was all you could do at home at night. I never got the creepy old man vibes from him back then, even though they show people in the doco who worked with him behind the scenes in Animal Hospital who said he was just gross. It also showed how he became retro cool again around that time for redoing songs like Stairway to Heaven in his daggy own style. It even shows him at Glastonbury where he got this incredible reception for being so naff that he was cool. So I was shocked when the news broke that he'd been charged and these stories came out. I had always just assumed he was this wholesome Aussie entertainment icon, one of our few exports who'd made it big overseas. And as we know, Rolf was found guilty of multiple historic offences. He started a prison sentence in 2014 at the age of 84. He was sentenced to over 5 years in jail, but under UK law, he was released after 3 at age 87. He went back to his home in Berkshire and his wife, Alwyn, who apparently turned a blind eye to his behaviour for years. He then passed away in 2023 at age 93, and Alwyn also passed away just 3 months later. Out of curiosity, I actually looked up what his life was like in jail as a very elderly man. He was initially put in a volatile prison where he was targeted and taunted, so they had to move him to a vulnerable prisoners unit at a lower security jail for his own safety. He also showed zero remorse. In 2015, he actually wrote a country rock song from his cell and mailed it to his friend. In the lyric, he mocked the victims, describing them as money-grabbing wenches and sultry 50-year-olds, and wrote that life behind bars was no hardship, really. He eventually got a job tending the prison gardens, which annoyed the other inmates, and started drawing free cartoons for prisoners and staff just to pass the time. Look, I haven't thought about Rolf Harris in years. Why would I? But watching this, it just feels completely revolting in hindsight that I ever looked at him as a comforting figure from home. Yuck. Good riddance, Rolf. Anyway, that is it for now. I'll chat to you next week.